Hare Krishna, welcome everyone. Happy to see you all and Happy New Year to everybody. Loads of blessings for a wonderful year ahead. Good to see you all. Let's continue. Today we are going to try and complete our second chapter. So it's a very important session and a lot of profound teachings here. Before we begin, I'll say the prayers to Guru and God. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurumilitamena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna.
गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णु गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुर्साक्षात् परब्रह्मा तस्मै श्री गुरुवे नमः तस्मै श्री गुरुवे नमः तस्मै श्री गुरुवे नमः.
Hare Krishna. Today we are going to do slokas 2.67 to 2.72. We have already shared this sloka in the group, so if you can please keep it in front of you, I'll start playing the slokas.
इन्द्रियाणां हि चरतां यन्मनोनुविधीयते तदस्य हरति प्रज्ञां वायुर्नावमिवाम्भसि तस्माद्यस्य महाबाहो निगृहीतानि सर्वशः इन्द्रियाणीन्द्रियार्थेभ्यस्तस्य प्रज्ञा प्रतिष्ठिता या निशा सर्वभूतानां तस्यां जागर्ति संयमी यस्यां जागृति भूतानि सा निशा पश्यतो मुनेः आपूर्यमाणम् अचलप्रतिष्ठम् समुद्रमापः प्रविशन्ति यद्वत् तद्वत् कामायम् प्रविशन्ति सर्वे स शान्तिमाप्नोति न कामकामी विहाय कामान्यः सर्वान् पुमांश्चरति निःस्पृहः निर्ममो निरहङ्कारः स शान्तिमधिगच्छति एषा भ्रामी स्थितिः पार्थ नैनां प्राप्य विमुह्यति स्थित्वा स्यामन्तकालेऽपि ब्रह्मनिर्वाणमृच्छति ॐ तत्सदिति श्रीमद्भगवद्गीतासु उपनिषत्सु ब्रह्मविद्यायां योगशास्त्रे श्रीकृष्णार्जुनसंवादे सांख्ययोगो नाम द्वितीयोऽध्यायः.
So let us recollect where we left our friend Arjuna. So the battlefield, let's recollect where we left the battlefield. The conches have already sounded. The air over Kurukshetra is thick with dust and metallic smell of all the weapons. And the warriors, they are all standing like moving walls. And they're all looking at faces and wondering, how come suddenly they have become my enemies? A lot of familiar faces. And between these two armies, mighty armies, each one is 18 akshoni strong. So between these two mighty armies, there is one single chariot standing, which became the stage for the most profound spiritual teaching of this yuga. And as you all may recollect, on that chariot we have our friend Arjuna. And he was such a great archer, such a great warrior, that at one point he had pleased even Lord Shiva in battle. Yet now he's feeling small. He's feeling afraid. He's feeling confused. and he is fighting all the doubts and insecurities in his mind. And the legendary Gandiva, which was gifted by the god of fire, Agni himself, now that is lying on his lap like a piece of dead wood. And here is our Krishna, who has voluntarily taken the role of a charioteer out of love for his friend, and he is turned towards Arjuna. The very wonderful thing to observe is that thousands of people are watching the battlefield, but it is only Sri Krishna who is watching the mind of Arjuna. Just like that, doesn't matter how many battles we are facing, our Krishna is always having a watch over us. He is watching our mind, he's our guide, he's there for us. And here he is addressing Arjuna as Partha, which helps make a connect. He's connecting Arjuna to his mother Kunti's strength. And he's saying, "Oh Partha, we have journeyed so far in our discourse, in our knowledge, in our spiritual journey, and I have shown you the immortal nature of the soul, I have shown you the path of action without attachment, and I have shown you what a Sthita Pragya is. But the teaching is still incomplete," he tells Arjuna. And then he continues, he says, "What I will tell you now is not just philosophy. I am going to reveal how your consciousness gets carried away and how we can bring it back on track. And what does it look like when our wisdom becomes unshakable?" Isn't it a very important set of lessons that we all need to understand? So far, until here, Krishna has already diagnosed the problem. He's already spoken about the mechanism of how the mind collapses. I hope you all remember we shared a chart as well that said where how it all starts and one leads to another and how eventually it leads to anger and loss of memory and so on and so forth. You all remember? Anybody remembers where it all starts? What is the start of that collapse? Yes, Sulataji?
Yeah, a contemplation, that is attachment, which leads to attachment.
Exactly. She actually gave the real perfect answer because that was the key word. The key word was contemplation. It's not just because you looked at something beautiful, it's not just because you heard something melodious. You start contemplating. And that is where the beginning is, the beginning of our downfall. The trap opens there. So Krishna already has explained all of that. Now Krishna is providing the mechanism for preventing such a downfall. And he's kind of saying that the kind of steadiness that I'm talking about, he says, it is not just about self-improvement, but it is Brahmistiti. Brahmistiti means alignment with the Absolute. And when you align yourself with that Absolute, that leads you to Brahma Nirvana. And that is what we are all aiming for. So here he starts 2.67. Indriyanam hi charatam. You can see where the Krishna is saying that the mind's focus on even a single sense can lead the intellect astray. Now, it's very beautiful the way Krishna is explaining. So, what Krishna says here is, he's questioning our usual blame game. Because what happens? Usually, we tend to find excuses. We tend to blame something else. For example, we will say, that person made me angry. Now, what do you mean he made you angry? I mean, how did that person become so powerful that he made you something that you did not want to be? Or we will say that, that situation disturbed my peace. So, in other words, the problem is with the situation. The problem is with the other person. So on and so forth. But Krishna is now talking about a more subtle truth. Krishna says that the sense objects themselves are kind of never the culprit. It is the mind's anuvidhiyate. So it's a very beautiful word, anuvidhiyate, which means something like running after or following obediently. That is what that word means. He says that is what creates the downfall. Like Sulataji just said, it all starts with contemplation. She didn't say it all starts with some beautiful thing coming in front of you or some melodious sound reaching your ears. Where it starts with contemplation. The moment you acknowledge what is contemplation is we going towards something, not something coming towards us. That is anuvidhiyate. For example, let us say a silly example I will give you. There is a soldier in ancient times. His job is to guard the main gate of a fort. I think we have all seen such pictures where a guard is standing, with a weapon in his hand, and so his job is to guard that fort. And usually they, pick the strongest soldier for the job because that main gate is kind of the weakest link. If that gate becomes compromised, then people get entry. And so the guard is standing there, and suddenly he sees a cute rabbit running around. And now he gets, intrigued by that rabbit, and he runs behind the rabbit. And what happens now? Because he ran behind the rabbit, now the gate, nobody is there to guard the gate. Now because of that, the fort suddenly becomes vulnerable, right? Now can we say that the fort became vulnerable because of the rabbit? And that is what we all do, no? In modern world, at least. Whenever something goes wrong, we try to find somebody to blame, somebody to fire, somebody. If this happened in today's modern world, people will say, go catch the rabbit and maybe kill the rabbit, But was that the problem? The problem was the soldier ran behind the rabbit. That is anuvidhiyate. That is what Krishna is saying. He's saying the problem is not with sense objects. The problem is our mind choosing to run behind them. So it is actually a very empowering statement because it puts power in your hands. What it means is you are not going to get distracted. You are not going to fall just because somebody comes in your life or just because somebody goes away from your life or so on and so forth. That will make you powerless. Krishna says you actually have the power that no matter what comes in your life, it is only your running behind, getting attached or being ours that causes all the distraction and turmoil. And also he says, very important, that when we talk about losing our inner stability, that is never a sudden thing. That doesn't happen just like this. It's a very incremental process. For example, you pick up your phone, you want to check for something important, that is why you picked up the phone. But we don't stop there. We want to look at one more picture, we want to look at one more reel, one more short, one more this, one more that. And before you realize, you got into doom scrolling. And now, if you do it for 2 days or 3 days, now it has become an addiction. Now you cannot, people say these days, people say that when someone cannot find their phone even for 5 minutes, they have a separation anxiety. But if you see, it didn't happen overnight. It didn't happen abruptly. It happened gradually. That is a very important thing. So, just like that, you give in to one weak moment, you start gossiping about somebody. Because gossip is a very pointless activity. And it is not fruitful. But let us say you give in to that once. Before you realize, it becomes a habit. So the mind that was meant to be a master ends up becoming a servant. And very powerful message here. The intellect which was meant to discern begins to justify. Why is justifying something wrong? Because primarily we are going against the truth. When we start justifying, we are blaming something else. Hey, why did you leave the gate? And you are supposed to be guarding the gate. Your first reaction, if it is justification, oh, what can I do? But how come the rabbit was there? It's not my fault. The rabbit came, the rabbit was in front of me. That is justification. So Krishna is saying that these are all symptoms that you are getting into a downward spiral. You are getting into that kind of a habit of losing your power. Now comes the most compassionate part of Krishna's teaching, where Krishna very beautifully is saying that this collapse of the mind, this collapse of our inner self, he says, it is not random. It is not just some mystery. He says it is a mechanism. Do you all agree it's a mechanism? Because he just explained using a chart, like one leads to another, leads to another. So it is a mechanism, correct? The most profound teaching then comes. He says, anything which is a mechanism will also have a method of operating and managing the mechanism. So powerful. You buy a TV, does it not come with a manual, user manual? So it's very, very powerful, where Krishna says that our mind is a mechanism, our progress is a mechanism, our failure is also a mechanism. And he says, if you acknowledge that, then you also have to understand that any mechanism will have a method of operation, an operating procedure. And he says, that's what I'm teaching you. He says, I'm teaching you that method, I'm teaching you that operating procedure using which you can control that mechanism and make it work for you instead of working against you. And 2.68 he says, therefore, O Mahabaho, his or her wisdom is established and steady, whose senses are controlled in all respects and withdrawn from the objects of the senses. Again, here calling Arjuna as Mahabaho, the mighty armed, is psychological brilliance, because again, Krishna is not shaming Arjuna. Krishna is not shaming him for just feeling weak or feeling confused or, Instead, he's reminding him of his true potential. He's telling Arjuna, you who can bend and string the mighty Gandiva that most people cannot even lift. That is Mahabaho. Now you have to learn how to master the strings of consciousness. Isn't that a very beautiful, very positive way of teaching something to somebody? So this kind of mind control, again, Krishna says it's not about suppression, it's not about force, it is about management, it's about skill. And that is the skill he is helping us develop now. Just like a charioteer, he is himself a charioteer. And how does the charioteer control the horses? Using the reins. What happens if you are not paying attention, if you are lazy, and if you are just letting go of the reins? Of course, the horses will do whatever they want to do. But then what happens if you pull the reins so tightly that you are almost choking the horses? They cannot still do what they're supposed to do. So you need to know perfectly how to manage, how tight to hold the rein, when to make it loose, when to make it tight. That is what Krishna is saying is a skill. It's not just about force. It's not that you keep on putting more force on the reins and somehow the horses will come more under control. That's not how it works, Arjuna. It's a skill. You need to know when to be forceful, when to be lenient, and how to manage the rein. And that is what he's teaching us now. And if you see what happens in why we are talking about skill and all is because today, if you see self-control, what we need to understand is we somehow think that self-control means absence of pleasure. Self-control means absence of many things. Krishna says, no. That's not what we are talking about. We are talking about self-control means just don't become a slave to your senses. It is not the absence of senses. It is just not becoming a slave to them. Like in the modern world, we all are taught that desire equals identity, isn't it? Because when you say being yourself, we say, what does it mean to be yourself? It means we think, I will eat whatever I want, I will drink whatever I want, I will wear whatever I want, and we think that is my identity. That's what we think, right? If I roam around with a torn pant and a torn shirt, that's my identity. That's how it is becoming, correct? So your desires have become your identity. That is how the material world, modern world projects. Whereas Krishna here tells us something very profound. Krishna says that actually your awareness is your identity. What means is that you are supposed to manage your desires using your intellect instead of running behind desires and becoming a slave to those desires. Such a beautiful teaching here, that your desire is not your identity, but your awareness is what is your true identity. Very beautiful. And then in 2.67, he reveals a startling secret where he says that when you understand these truths, you become awakened. So your consciousness becomes awakened. But people whose consciousness is not awakened, who are not on this path, they live in opposite worlds. So he's saying people who are on the path and whose consciousness is getting awakened, and people who are not on the path and people whose consciousness is not awakened, they are actually in opposite worlds. What feels like daylight to one feels like night to the other. See, Krishna is not just talking in puzzles. He is describing two completely different ways of experiencing the same reality. For example, material people, they are chasing pleasures, they are accumulating possessions, they are seeking recognition. Then they will say that they are feeling alive, they are feeling, full of life because they are achieving, they are winning. Correct? That's how they talk. But then if you look at wise people, the elevated folks, the ones whose consciousness is already awakened, for them this all feels like sleep. This all feels like a waste. Because they have already tasted what true success feels like. The wise, for example, they believe in contemplation, they believe in meditation, they believe in focusing on what is inside. People who are not on the path, they will look at them and they will say, oh, it looks so boring. I said, not happened with you. They'll say, oh, that is so boring. Like, let's go, let's jam, let's go to a party, let's dance. And you are saying, no, can I just sit and meditate? They will say, oh, what boring life you have. Because they cannot understand. So it is not about judgment. It is not about one being superior. It is about recognizing that the spiritual path is not easy for one more reason. That reason is it will always have a friction with people who are not on the path. So that's what Krishna very beautifully says. Ya nisha sarva bhutanam tasyam jagrati sanyami yasyam jagrati bhutani sa nisha pashyato muneha. That which is night to all beings, in that such a wise person wakes. That in which all beings are awake, that is night to the wise sage. The material people are always focusing on material things, external. Whereas the saints, the sages, the elevated ones, they are doing the opposite. They are withdrawing their senses and they are focusing inwards. Like why we are talking about all of this, I'll tell you. One of the reasons is spiritual life will usually seem unreasonable or even foolish to those who are still not on the path. And you will have to learn how to manage that. For example, somebody who is waking up at 4:30, 4 o'clock in the morning to meditate, a material person will tell that person, you are just losing out on the good life. Because I'm nicely sleeping, I'm cozy, I have a warm bed, and look at you. What are you doing? Why do you have to wake up at 4? And so you see the contrast now. I'll give you the contrast and then I'll tell you exactly why we are talking about all of this here, why Krishna is talking about all of this here. So when the worldly person asks, how can I get more? The sage will ask, how can I need less? You see how these are two opposites? Material view, material world, how can I achieve more? How can I get more? Spiritual progress, how can I need less? Because somebody very famously said, the secret to happiness lies in the reduction of your needs. No, that is the spiritual path. And the worldly person, they will seek security in accumulation. Like they think security means more friends, more money, more power, more this, more that. And for them, that feels like security. Whereas the elevated person whose consciousness is rising, they will see security in letting go. Vairagya. They realize that that is true security, detachment. You see how these are opposites? Now, why is Krishna talking about all of that here in this moment? Because he is preparing Arjuna. He is telling Arjuna that Arjuna, you may face temporary loneliness when you follow the path that is right. That applies to all of us. When we follow the path which is right instead of following the path which is popular, we will almost always find ourselves being lonely. You know, I'm telling this in a funny way, but this definitely happened with me. Like many years ago, I used to be very social. I'm still social, but in a different way. And some of those older friends, I met them after many years. Like I was in another country, and so I went to India for a trip. We had a small reunion, and I met some of my very old friends who were my friends when I was like in my teens or early 20, you know. And they were like, come, let's go, let's have some must daru sharu lete hain, let's have some drinks. And I said, sorry yaar, like, you know, I kind of I don't drink. And I could see the disappointment on their faces. Hey, what do you mean you don't drink? And then the other friend was like, theek hai, chal, let's just go first. And then they were like ordering that, let's have some nice meat and chicken. I said, no yaar, I don't have meat. Like that it kept happening. And then those guys got so frustrated. They were like, what do we do with you? You know, you won't drink, you won't eat, you won't this, you won't come to dance, you know. Your life has become so boring. So I don't blame them, but what I'm saying is, now if I am not having viveka, if I'm not having discernment, if my intellect is not where it is supposed to be, I will not be able to handle that. I will probably give in. This is where most of us fail. We will say, TK, it's just a New Year party, it's just Christmas, it's okay, like one day, it's one time, let me just give in. And what happens before you realize? See, once you lose control, you have lost control. You cannot say that I'm losing control in a controlled way. That is a very, that is kind of an oxymoron. Like, you know, you cannot lose control in a controlled way. You either have control or you don't. And once you don't, then it is, you are at somebody else's mercy. You are at the mercy of Prakriti. That is the message. So he is now advising Arjuna, saying, you need to be prepared. You need to be prepared to walk the path of righteousness. You need to be prepared to follow what is right, even if it means that you feel lonely, even if it means that people around you don't understand you, even if it means that everybody looks at you as if you are doing something wrong. You need to be sure on whether what you are doing is right. So this applies to all of us because we are all living in a society, we all have our circle. So I'm not saying, Krishna is not saying, judge others, don't tell others that, you are in darkness, I'm in light. That's not the point. Just understand how this mechanism works and don't get disappointed if nobody understands you. Don't get disappointed if you find friction. Don't get disappointed if, people make fun of you. Learn to handle it with this knowledge that it is natural. Another very strong message here is that it is not that people who are material minded have no hope. The message here is even what starts as a material quest can be transformed and can become something spiritual. A good example is in the Bhagavad Purana, there is the story of Dhruva. You should all read it. And we can maybe talk about the story later in detail. So Dhruva was a young boy, and his stepmother, he's a prince, and his stepmother is insulting him. And his father is sitting right there, but his father is not even intervening. His father is not protecting him. And so Dhruva is pretty upset. I'm making the story very short just for lack of time. So he decides to go and meditate. He's like, I will meditate, I will get some boons, and I will eventually get a kingdom which is far superior to what my father has. Why? Because he thinks that way he will earn his respect and love. So when he starts this journey, it is a material quest. He is beginning the journey by seeking something material. He wants a kingdom which is far greater than what his father has. And then the story goes on to show that in that process, he discovers that this devotion that he started feeling for the Lord, he realizes that is so much more precious than any kingdom that he can get. And that makes him one of the greatest devotees. So the message here is, even material people, even our material quests can be transformed into something divine, into something spiritual. And 2.70 is probably one of the most compassionate, practical teachings in the Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna is saying that a saint or a sage or even a Siddhapragya is not someone who never has any desires entering his mind. So pay attention here. It's very positive for all of us. So Krishna says that it is not that somebody who is a saint or a sage or a Siddhapragya never has any desires entering their mind. He says that is not true. They also have desires that enter their mind, like rivers that keep flowing into an ocean. He says what is the difference is their inner capacity to receive without being disturbed. So for example, if you have a small puddle and you put even a glass of water into it, the puddle will overflow. That is a vast disturbance happening. Whereas put a glass of water in an ocean, ocean ko farak bhi nahi pada. The ocean doesn't even notice. In fact, by design, all the rivers are flowing into the ocean all the time. But the ocean doesn't get disturbed because of that. The ocean doesn't start overflowing just because a river came and merged into it. That is the beautiful teaching here. Apuryamanam achala pratishtam samudram apah pravishanti yadvat tadvat kamaha yam pravishanti sarvesah shantim apnoti na kamakami. Just as the ocean remains steady and undisturbed by the constant flow of water from rivers entering into it, just like that, a sage is unmoved by the flow of desires entering them. And that is how they attain peace. Not the person who keeps running behind those desires. So what changes? It is not that a saint or a sage or elevated person never has desires. What changes is how they react to those desires. Are they having the capacity to let it pass by without disturbing them, or are they now contemplating on those desires and starting to run behind those desires? That is what differentiates a Siddhapragya from somebody else. The word used, achala pratishtam, unshakably established, he is pairing it with apuryamanam, which is continuously being filled. See, it feels like a contradiction, correct? One part of the statement is unshakable, constant. The other part of the statement is something which is dynamic, constantly flowing. So it's kind of a paradox where you have a dynamic reception, but you have constant stability. And that is extremely important. What does that mean practically for us? That if we have to be peaceful, if we have to progress spiritually, it doesn't mean that you try to remove all the triggers. It doesn't mean that you try to remove all sensory objects, all desires. You cannot remove everything. You cannot put yourself inside a vacuum and say that now I will grow spiritually. What that actually means is deepen our inner self. Our inner self is currently a puddle. Deepen it, make it like an ocean. Then these disturbances won't even matter. Now, that is the real path that Krishna is pointing us towards. The crucial term here is kama kami. Kama kami means desirer of desires. Someone who is constantly running behind desires. And Krishna is very clear. Krishna says such people can never experience what is true happiness or what is true peace. And then 2.71, Krishna is identifying what are the mental conditions that can help us cultivate such ocean-like consciousness. See how methodical, how step by step his teaching is. So methodical. So he uses three terms in 2.71. One is nihaspriha, which means without craving. Second is nirmama, which means without mindness, me. And the third is nirahankar, without ahankar, without ego. So that is kind of the complete diagnosis. Because spriha is not just desire. Spriha is more about the thirst, the restless searching that keeps us agitated. Because we are never we are never satisfied. We are never content. You got a bicycle, now you want a bike. You got a bike, now you want a car. You got a car, now you want a bigger car. You want an SUV. You got an SUV, maybe now you want a private jet. God knows, but it's kind of a restlessness. It's kind of, I want more. That is spriha. So Krishna says we need to be nihaspriha, without that kind of a restless running behind. Mama is mine, and this is what makes us assume that we can achieve security through possession. The word possession, what does possess mean? Possess means I own something or something belongs to me. That is mama, that comes in. Like my house, my toy, my career, my reputation, my family, so on and so forth. We need to understand that everything that we call mine is very temporary. Someone very beautifully said that even this body is not ours. Do you really think this body is yours? Like if your hair is falling, try commanding your body. I know, I failed. Try telling your body, hey, no more hair fall. It's not listening to you. But then how can it be yours, man? I mean, if you cannot control it, then how can it be yours? It is controlled by Prakriti, right? So there's someone beautifully said that even your body is not yours. It is just on rent. You are just a tenant. You are not an owner. That is why you cannot make any structural changes by yourself. You are at the mercy of the owner, which is Prakriti. So that is why the second thing he says, nirmama. And then ahankar, we all know what it is. I is that ego consciousness, false ego. So every narrative becomes something about I succeeded. I was wronged. I deserve better. That is causing us so much pain. That is causing us so much of trouble. What it means is much of our suffering is not coming from just events or objects themselves, but it is coming because of the ownership patterns that we impose upon them. Like there can be a small setback in a relationship, for example, but it becomes agony because we put that I there. How can you do this to me? And that becomes what is causing all the pain. Whereas neither you nor I is the truth. Why take ourselves so seriously? Is the question here. The beauty is even positive experience can become a source of anxiety. You think about it. Somebody accomplishes something and they say, I achieved it. So they are feeling happy at that moment. But the next day onwards, they are into anxiety. Why? Because now they have to protect that achievement. And maybe they have to repeat it to stay relevant. See this, how this people who win the World Cup, they have to keep winning because next season somebody is challenging them again, or the world title. It's not that you won the world title and then for eternity you are the world champion, right? The next season somebody is going to challenge you. So even the positive experience now becomes something which is a source of anxiety. Why? Because of we are not nirmama. We are not nirahankar. That I, that me, the structure that we are imposing on even positive things ends up causing us pain. And then we come to the final shloka of the second chapter. Another very beautiful shloka. He says, Esha brahmi sthiti partha nainam prapya vimuhyati sitivasyam antakalepi brahma nirvanam chati. Another very powerful shloka. O Partha, such is the state of Sthita Pragya that having attained, you will never again be deluded. See how important this teaching is. Becoming established in this state, even at the hour of death, Antakale, you will still be liberated from the cycle of life and death and reach the supreme abode of God. This is kind of the icing on the cake, where Krishna is placing the kind of capstone on the second chapter's architecture of wisdom that he has provided so far. So he's using the term Brahmisthiti, which is the culmination of human potential, as something which is just a recovered original nature instead of a distant achievement. I don't know if it makes sense. We have discussed this earlier also. What Krishna repeats is this, it is like Brahmasthiti, or this kind of knowing your true self. You see the words used? It is know your true self. It is not create yourself. It is not like you have to create something new. It is already existing. We are just supposed to know. We are just supposed to realize. It is not something distant. Like God is not in some other planet and you have to somehow reach God. God is in you, but you just have to realize it. Brahmi means of Brahman. Sthiti means state, position. So this is not a temporary experience, he says. It's a fundamental shift in your consciousness where you identify with something that is eternal instead of identifying with something which is temporary. And what is the beauty of this? Krishna is emphasizing three crucial aspects of this. One, nainam prapya vimuhyati, irreversible. As we just discussed, material possessions, material victories, they are there today, they may be gone tomorrow. But this kind of realization, once you realized God, you become God. There is no going back, there is no reversal. It's very powerful, right? It's very beautiful. It's worth, is it not worth seeking? Because that is the only thing that you can achieve, which once achieved, you never have to worry about it again. It will never go away. And then he says, stability even in transition, antakalepi. Like even this realization, even it happens in a moment, and even if that moment is the moment of your death, he says, even that's sufficient. And then complete liberation, Brahma Nirvanam. Two profound terms. Brahman, you know what Brahman is, we already spoke about it. Here Nirvanam means kind of extinguishing. And he's saying we will extinguish the false sense of separation. It is like a wave that finally realizes that it is actually the ocean. And it no longer will identify itself as a wave now, because it has already realized that I look like a wave, but I'm actually the ocean. So you can take down the number Mandukya Upanishad 2.2.8, and it's a very beautiful sloka. So it'll be good if you can read that and try to understand that. It basically says the knot of the heart is broken, all doubts are resolved, and all karmas are exhausted when one realizes that supreme which is both high and low. It's kind of a very profound promise, and that transforms how we look at the spiritual path, because the spiritual path is not about finding something new or finding something that we lack. It is just about uncovering what we already are. Very powerful practical implication is that every moment of practice will contribute a little to that revelation, because the ocean is always there. We are just trying to remove all the distractions so that we can realize that truth. In practice, this is a very powerful promise to all of us. Every time we choose not to follow our senses, every time we choose not to give in or not to become a slave to the senses, we are actually getting closer to that experience of our true self. Because each time we act like that, and each time we resist the temptation to identify with that I, we are weakening the illusion of separation. Slowly, we are weakening it. Because it is an illusion at the end of the day, and you are chipping away at that. So the success may not come overnight, and it doesn't have to come overnight. It's a process, it's a journey. Just keep at it, keep chipping away at it. And one fine day that illusion will break. So you don't have to feel discouraged that, oh, yesterday I failed, or day before I said I will not touch some alcohol, but oh, yesterday I gave in, it was New Year, my friend forced me, whatever happened. But that doesn't have to become a discouragement. You have to again gather yourselves up. Next time the similar thing comes in front of us, let us resist, let us not give in, and know that act of resistance, that act of management, that act of managing your desires has actually helped you weaken that illusion of separation a little bit more. Very, very encouraging teaching here. So as we complete this exploration of Sankhya Yoga, you can see that, let's go back to the battlefield and see what's going on there. Have the armies changed? Does anybody think the armies changed? No. Did the battleground change? No. Did the charioteer change? Did the chariot change? What changed? None of that changed. What changed was Arjuna's perception now. This profound knowledge that Krishna has given him, now it has caused a kind of positive change inside Arjuna. Now his consciousness is shifting. Now his perception is changing. I hope that's happening with all of us here. We are all mini Arjunas. And if we introspect on these teachings deep enough, that change will happen within us also. What looked like a very fearful proposition, what looked like a very confusing situation, now starts looking like something more clear, something more manageable. Whereas the situation never changed. What changed was Arjuna's perception. And that is true for us. We shouldn't try to fight and change our circumstances. We may not succeed, because that is the wrong battle. Instead, we should focus on changing our inner perception and our level of consciousness. Then the circumstance would automatically look different to us. Any questions so far, or shall we go to the final part of this? Okay, no questions. Wonderful. So I would like to talk about one parable, because I just told you that this is Krishna's message. Don't stop, don't get discouraged. It's okay to fail. What is not okay, like somebody said, it's not bad if you fall. What is bad or what is wrong is if you refuse to get up. And somebody very jokingly said, you fall 7 times, you have to get up 9 times. So that is what is important, is we keep up our efforts, that we don't lose heart, we don't lose hope. And we should know that progress is happening. We just can't see it. In the previous batch, we gave the example of a screw. You're trying to, it's a very long screw, and you're trying to fix the screw in the wall, and you think you are going on rotating and nothing is happening because the screw is still shaking, it doesn't seem. But the problem is, if you just stop, don't stop. Because you should know that with every turn, a change is happening. You just don't realize it because it's a small change. You keep tightening, and then suddenly you will realize that, yes, it's working. Now the screw is tight. Just like that, Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, he explained the same thing with a small story. It's about a woodcutter who makes a living by cutting small amounts of wood, but he's usually collecting wood from the outskirts of the forest because it's very easy. He doesn't have to really take too much efforts. A lot of wood is already fallen down, and so he's just collecting them, he's making a living. And he continues doing that for many years, until one day a holy man walked by and he's advising him. He tells the woodcutter, Egiye jao. Is Bengali. Egiye jao means march onward, march forward, go further. Initially, the woodcutter did not understand, why is he asking me to do that? Why should I go forward when there is already wood here? But thankfully, he decides to listen because he's a holy man. He's like, let me try listening. So he goes a little deeper in the forest. And when he goes a little deeper, he realizes that the quality of the wood is so much better that he can gather half the amount of wood and still get more money. He says, wow. So encouraged by this, the woodcutter now says, the holy man just said, Egiye jao. He didn't say how much to go. He just said, go forward. I went a little forward. Already I'm seeing some benefits. So let me keep going forward. So that becomes his mantra now. Egiye jao, Egiye jao. And eventually he discovers a copper mine, and then it makes more money, and then he discovers a gold mine, and ultimately he discovers a diamond mine, and he becomes very wealthy. So Ramakrishna is using this as just a story to tell us that Egiye jao means just because you think you have a certain amount of spiritual practice today, don't stop. Keep going, because the story talks about material success, but it is not truly that. It's not the intent. The intent is you will discover richness, more richness, as we keep going further. You will discover the gold and copper hidden inside you, and eventually you will discover that Kohinoor which is inside you, which is your true self. And until that, you cannot stop. Keep on going. So that should become our mantra also. Egiye jao, Egiye jao. Okay, now I'm getting up at 4 a.m. and I'm spending 15 minutes meditating. Wonderful. But that cannot be the end now. What can you do more on the spiritual practice? Because have you reached the goal? The ultimate goal of realizing your true self. Until that happens, Egiye jao. Let that be our mantra. Also remember, let us say you are thirsty, and I am sitting here lecturing you about qualities of water. And I am telling you, water means H2O, two atoms of hydrogen and one of oxygen. And water has a boiling point of 100 degrees. It freezes at 0 degrees. Acha lag raha hai, but is your thirst quenched? What use is all of that? You are still thirsty. What is required is you need to get water and drink it. Just like that, all this knowledge is all good to have, but until you do abhyasa, until you do your own practice, Sravana, Manana, and Nididhyasana, you have to implement it. Until you practice it, and practice it with faith. only then your thirst, the true, real thirst, will get quenched. So may Krishna's promise inspire us. The teaching is complete, the path is clear, the destination is inviting us. All that remains is that we take our first real step, then the next step, and agiye jao, and follow the path shown by saints and sages who have already walked before us. The external battle of Kurukshetra is going to go on for 18 days, but the internal battle was won already at this moment. Arjuna's internal battle he already won here when the second chapter was complete, when he started understanding what is true, what is not true, and which way he is supposed to go. The same kind of discovery is awaiting each one of us. And we all have our own inner battlefield, and we need to overcome our own battles and our own hurdles this way. So with that we can say Om Tat Sat. Thus the truth is declared, and that concludes this part of the glorious teaching of Sankhya Yoga by Sri Krishna. So Hare Krishna. With that I can open the floor if you have any questions, comments, and in the next session we will try to have a in-depth revision where it is important that we revisit the teachings and internalize them. Anybody has anything to say, add, or? Okay, Soumyaji has something.
Guruji, the feeling of ambition and passion, most of the times it would come from I, right? I'm not sure if it comes from ego or it coming from self-awareness, but how can these two feelings help us achieve spirituality? First of all, can they help us? Of course, you told us the example of Dhruva, but in today's life, like how can it help us achieve spirituality if it can?
Yes. First of all, ambition is not wrong. Passion is not wrong. We just have to direct it in the right direction. And that is the whole message of Bhagavan Shri Krishna. So you have the ambition, you have the passion, you have the energy. Now instead of directing it towards going and getting a bigger car, direct it towards let me deepen my spiritual practice. That is the first part of the answer. The second part of the answer is yes, I want this, I want that is a material quest. But I need to know who this I really is. That is a spiritual quest. But both need that fire inside you. It is not a child's play to go on this journey of self-realization. It is not, it requires tremendous energy, it requires tremendous focus. So utilize all that energy that you have and direct it here. Direct it towards the spiritual path is the whole message. In fact, Krishna will also say later on that, and even in other scriptures like Bhakti Sutra, where the message is that a vikara becomes a vikara based on where it is directed. For example, you have a desire, attachment, which is a vikara. But if you are desiring only the Lord's grace, no, that's not a vikara. You see, it's like you are a soldier, you have an arrow, you are directing it at an enemy. That's not a bad thing. But you direct the same arrow at innocent people, no, that's a bad thing. Same arrow, same technique, same force. What changed is the direction. And that is pretty much a big part of the teaching from Sri Krishna. That is where your viveka comes into play. Your intellect has to be there in order to even ask this question, introspect on the question, and make the required changes. So thank you.
Thank you.
We have, who is this? Kahanji?
Yes, so I want to add a similar question like Sanjay. So basically, in today's world, we all are ambitious and passionate about our own goals. But is it safe to say that to in journey to achieve that goal, we don't have to let those wants or the final goal to corrupt our inner soul. So, like, let's say if I want something, but after I achieve that something, after I possess that something, it should not corrupt me in such a way that, like, I want more about it, or like I want more materialistic things like those, like it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think
So,
what you are
like,
asking is you should basically always have the viveka. You should always have the sense of discernment and discrimination on what you are aiming for, what you are trying to accomplish, and whether it is becoming a obsession or whether you are mindful, whether you are aware. So spiritual success does not mean you cannot have material success. Like the most popular example and the most repeated example is the example of King Janak. King Janak was a great Maharaj. He had a huge kingdom, powerful army, all the riches you could think of. But internally, he was a complete Vairagi. He is known as, a Mahatma who was completely detached. Because somebody is asking him, your palace is burning, and he's least bothered. So that should be our inner state. So Krishna wants us to be successful. But Krishna does not want us to get entangled. He does not want us to get distracted from the true path. That's right. You are using the word corrupted, and I would just say distracted, or distracted from the real goal, the real path. That should be there. And also, this is what we or other great saints will always say, that it is okay to have material goals, but you should always have a spiritual aspect behind it. Like, for example, I want to be a successful doctor, but why? Do I want to be a successful doctor just to make money, or do I want to be a successful doctor so that I can heal a lot of patients? You see? So that mindset shift can happen even when you are on the path to achieving your material goals. You see, I want to be powerful. Why? Do you want to be powerful just to fulfill your ego, or do you want to be powerful so that you can uplift others? See, that reason, that intent for your ambition, if that can be aligned with something which is divine, then yes, that itself can become a spiritual practice for you. I hope that answers your question, Kahanji.
yes. So, after all, the intention matters, like we have discussed till now. Even if you are ambitious, you need to have good intentions that will lead
Yes.
to have good actions.
Yes, definitely. And you have to do it with that sense of karmanyevadikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana. You are doing what you are supposed to do. You are aligned with what is right. You are aligned with your dharma. And you continue doing what needs to be done. Just don't get distracted. Don't jump around and assume that you are somehow very powerful when you succeed. And at the same time, don't sulk and collapse when you fail. All you need to ask yourself is, did I do what needed to be done at the right time in the right way? Then that should be the mechanism for going behind your ambitions. Thank you for that question. I hope you are able to internalize, and happy to have more discussions one-on-ones until it becomes very clear. Because you still have your entire life ahead of you. I want to make sure that you have the right understanding of these lessons.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Okay, so if nobody else has any other questions or comments, we can conclude this session for today. Once again, wishing you all a wonderful year ahead, and in the next session, we will have a dive deep and a in-depth revision where we will request participation from everyone. Okay, so Hare Krishna, see you all.
Hare Krishna, everyone.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Happy New Year.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna.
Happy New Year to everyone.
New Year.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.